sacrifice, it looks so pretty for more like, because people are turning more to vertical videos that aren't as pretty. I don't mind it looking a little rough, but
let's rough it up.
let's raw dog this.
Do you guys need me to move?
Nope, you stay there. We need humans. Humans. And then we can kind of end by that sign. Does that work?
Sure.
Yeah, walking into the Bruce Owen Center.
Let me just kind of get started and let's see if we want to do it with or without the light.
Yeah.
It's well lit in here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're trying to figure out where it looks the best. Minute 20. Okay. We're probably just gonna kind of walk and stuff. So if I'm like, yeah, hey, if you go inside the doors of the, where are we? The Bruce something?
Yeah, tell them where it's at so they
Yeah,
know and they're
Bruce
not like we are.
Owen. where are we? The Bruce Owen Theater. Folks have already filed into the auditorium. Make it look like they're already seated because we're literally starting right now. I have a question if they can hear me. Guessing not. In the show. They're in weather. I can give you a heads up when we're like about a minute and a half because they're doing weather first.
I want to do one more critical focus.
Okay, cool. Do you want to try to you want to fake it real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, yeah, hey guys, this is the Bruce Owen Theater on the campus of OCCC. Folks have filed through these doors and they're filling up that theater behind me. Things are getting started for this really one-of-a-kind conversation on education. Blah, 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 blah. I'll read the, kind of maybe end here. I'll read the statement from Lyndall Fields, da-da-da-da. We're gonna be seeing a lot more of these. And then he'll do a Q&A. And then at the end of the day, I mean, I could be like, all right, I gotta go. Yeah? Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay.
If we're ending here and you've got to go, then.
But hey, things are getting started. I gotta moderate this conversation. You can watch online. You move back there. You good? Okay, about a minute out. Oh my goodness, running the gamut on all the issues that teachers and parents, all of us care about, whether that's classroom management, whether it's funding, driving up our literacy rates. I think we all are invested in this. We all want our public education to be better, and I think a lot of folks are tired of hearing from outside groups or business leaders. They want to hear from the educators themselves, the experts, and they're all inside here. We're at the Bruce Owen Theater on the campus of OCCC. Things are getting started right behind those double doors in that theater, starting things off with some data. We're presenting survey results so that we're really on the same page as we talk about this issue. And I mentioned that panel. It is really the best of the best. We've got a district superintendent, former superintendent, longtime educators, a Board of Education member, a lawmaker. So these are really folks who have a say and they're listening. We also want to hear from you, so we'll be taking audience questions. Some folks have asked, hey, is State Superintendent Lyndall Fields going to be here? He is not with us tonight, but he did give us a statement, so I want to share that with you. He says that he's encouraged to hear so many conversations about education, regardless of backgrounds, beliefs, or political affiliations. He says, I hope all Oklahomans can agree that our children deserve a stronger, healthier system of public education. It's only through conversations that we can find common ground and start on a path that leads us to a top-ranked system of education. So the state superintendent, this is the kind of thing that he wants to see happening. He says it's going to take all of us to fix this issue. Matt? Oh man, they have been happening nonstop for months because we heard about the Mississippi Miracle some months ago, and we knew that was kind of maybe a framework, a path that some folks were going to try to replicate here. So how did they do it? How much money did it take? So we're all having those discussions right now to see what it's going to really take. It's not going to be just a silver bullet, so to speak, solution. I think the experts are pointing to a long-term investment. That's what it took in Mississippi. So we expect to see a lot of conversations about that, and involvement from parents. That's another issue. And then all of the things we're asking teachers to do now, well, not asking them to take away anything. So finding out what their real struggles are, because they want to be successful too. Mm-hmm. You know, that's absolutely part of it. When we say it's going to take everybody, it's going to take everybody. And you ask any educator, they say parental involvement is key. We cannot just turn this issue over to teachers and say, hey, fix it, teach our kids. We do have a part to play at home as parents and as a community. And I think that's something we're seeing right now with these conversations. All the stakeholders involved stepping up and saying, yeah, we want to fix this too. How do we do it? Tonight's the start of that. Thank you. And I'm leaving the microphone here for you, but I'll grab it if
Yep.
interview later if you need it. I might be able to pull a bite from here. It's just Barb doesn't want me to use anything.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Chris Kohler. I'm a proud volunteer of Oklahoma Citizens for Education, and on behalf of OCE, welcome. We're grateful for the educators, the students, the parents, the community members, partners, and leaders who made the decision to show up here tonight. Your presence matters because education in Oklahoma matters. This is not a debate. This is not a campaign event, and it's not a political stunt or movement. This is all about listening, learning, and moving forward together. Oklahoma Citizens for Education exists to lift up Oklahoma education because strong communities create strong schools, and strong schools create strong communities. We are a nonpartisan, community-driven organization focused on supporting teachers, students, and classrooms across Oklahoma. We don't speak for educators, we walk alongside them, and we believe the people closest to the work should be leading this conversation. Oklahomans know how to come together, and we see it in tragedies, we see it in celebrations, and we see it in Friday nights in our stands. And we know that when Oklahomans come together, we win together. And education deserves the same focus and the same unity. This led to this conversation that we're calling the Oklahoma Shift, because for too long, conversations about education have been fragmented, often reactive, political, or disconnected from the real classroom realities that our teachers are navigating. The Oklahoma Shift exists to flip that page. This is a statewide, nonpartisan effort to bring educators, families, communities, higher education, nonprofits, and civic leaders together into the same room, not to argue, but to align around shared responsibility. The Oklahoma Shift is not about blame. It's not about promoting one solution. It's about listening, aligning our efforts, and creating practical pathways that help communities and schools support one another and help schools serve every student within the community. Tonight's town hall is one piece of this shift. To ground this conversation, what's actually happening inside classrooms, we want to hear directly from educators who walk this work every single day. I'd like to pass the microphone now to my friend and colleague in this work, Sandra Valentine, to share a few insights from the poll survey through the lens of a lived classroom teacher.
Thank you, Dr. Culver. The poll survey was designed by teachers, for teachers, and school workers to honestly capture the health of classrooms across Oklahoma. What educators are telling us is consistent. Teachers are deeply committed to their students, to literacy, and to learning. At the same time, many are feeling the weight of increasing expectations, added responsibilities, and growing challenges without enough being removed from their plates. What this data reflects isn't frustration, it's care. Teachers want to do right by their students, and they're asking for conversations and solutions that acknowledge classroom reality. Let's take a closer look at what we are seeing. Number one, we have educator burnout and retention. 78% of Oklahoma educators who took the poll survey reported experiencing burnout or considered leaving the profession in the last 6 months. This is the clearest signal that teacher retention is very low, even among educators who deeply love their students. Number two, teachers do not feel heard. 68% of educators say their voice is not heard in decisions affecting their classroom. That means nearly 7 out of 10 teachers feel disconnected from decisions that directly impact their daily work. How can our teachers truly teach without autonomy? Number three, classrooms are being held together by personal sacrifice. 98% of educators report personally spending their own money or resources to make sure students have what they need to learn. That's not generosity. That's a system depending on unsustainable individual sacrifice.
What Sandra just shared reflects what we're seeing across the state in Oklahoma, not unique to just one community or one district, but the poll data tells us something very clear. Classroom health, educator sustainability, and student success are all deeply connected. And when educators are stretched thin, it affects learning, morale, and long-term stability for all of our schools. That's why tonight matters, because ignoring these signals has real consequences. Tonight you'll hear from leaders from different experiences and perspectives, but they all share one commitment: Oklahoma education. Panelists are here to speak from experiences, not from political party or political affiliation. And audience input matters here. Listening matters and curiosity matters. We ask everyone to engage with respect, with openness, and a shared commitment to strengthening education across our great state. This is not just another conversation. Let me be clear. It's a chance to flip the page together. And with that, I want to thank our partners, our panelists, and everyone who helped make tonight possible. It is now my honor to turn things over to our moderator, who will guide us through this conversation ahead. We're grateful to be joined by Wendy Suarez of Fox 25. Wendy has spent years telling the stories of Oklahomans and shining a light on the issues that matter most in our communities, including public education. Wendy, thank you for being here tonight and for moderating tonight's town hall. We're excited to turn this over to you.
Thank you so much for having me and for allowing Fox 25 to be part of this conversation. We care deeply about this issue, and this is kind of putting our money where our mouth is and not just reporting the headlines and things that jump out in the news. This is an ongoing conversation, and I think it's going to take a lot of time. This is just the start of it. So thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here. This is community-led, community-driven, and so we need you. Tonight's town hall, hosted by Oklahoma Citizens for Education in partnership with Oklahoma City Community College and Fox 25. This is a nonpartisan, solution-focused conversation. So I think you guys kind of have the framework of how this is going to work. We're going to have this discussion. We're going to open it up to the audience members, so please be listening and thinking about things that you want to ask, and our panelists will have a chance to respond. And we're going to keep things moving so everyone has a chance to participate. Let me introduce these fine folks to my left. Our panelists couldn't ask for a better group of experienced, knowledgeable folks who really have a grasp on this issue and what needs to happen. To my immediate left is Jamie Cole. She is the Oklahoma public school teacher and education advocate who leads the Oklahoma Advocates community. You might be aware of them online, amplifying teacher voices all across the state. And next to Jamie is Dr. Jason Perez. Dr. Perez is superintendent of Deer Creek Public Schools and a longtime Oklahoma educator focused on strengthening schools and supporting teachers. Thank you for being here, Dr. Perez. And next up is Senator Carrie Hicks, our Oklahoma senator and reading specialist who advocates for educators, students, and families. She's the one you see in the chambers kind of doing the work, arguing on behalf of so many educators in our state, bringing her experience to the table. She's all the way over there. Okay, y'all are out of order. That's gonna, y'all can mess me up. Okay. Okay, Craig, we'll get to you. Craig McVeigh is not wearing his cowboy hat, so that's also going to throw me off. He's a retired Oklahoma educator and former superintendent with decades of experience supporting schools, teachers, and students. And finally, Becky Carson at the middle of the room there, longtime Oklahoma educator and current member of the Oklahoma State Board of Education, bringing decades of classroom experience to her work. You hear that, decades of experience. I was thinking, how many years between all of you on the stage in Oklahoma classrooms seeing the reality of the situation, and I think that's what makes this panel so phenomenal. So thank you guys for being here. Let's get things started. And we'll start with Jamie. Question one, from your perspective, Jamie, what are the most common challenges currently facing Oklahoma classrooms and educators?
I think everyone would agree with me that it is behaviors. There's such a huge push for the Mississippi Miracle. There's such a huge push for all these literacy programs, for all these different things that we're going to see a lot in the legislature, I have a feeling. But until we can get these behaviors under control, there's no learning to be had. When we're spending the majority of our time with behaviors and on and on and on, there's absolutely nothing that we're going to be able to accomplish or get there until we can get the behaviors under control.
Is that something that's getting worse?
Yes. This is my 25th year of teaching. And you know, I see so many comments, which Facebook is such a cesspool, and even though I run a big Facebook group, I get it. But so many comments of why aren't we doing more? What, this and that. But there has to be a buy-in, not just from the educative perspective, but the parents have got to buy in as well. And, I think when I started in the 90s, we didn't have iPads. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have all the things that we're seeing now. And I think that is a part of the discussion that I would like to see. Maybe, one of my things is maybe no technology in the lower grades. I don't know. I don't know. I think that's where we're all at. Is I get asked all the time, what do we do? I don't know. I don't know.
Anybody else want to comment on that issue? I know if a teacher is having to manage class or a disruption, that's time that they're not teaching.
Yeah, I think what we know is we need more caring, trusted adults in every building across the state of Oklahoma. And that when we have assistant or vice principals in elementary schools in particular, those behaviors and those referrals significantly decrease. And so I know that a lot of folks want to say our administration and our administrative costs are overbloated. That's not true. If you look nationally, we're actually at the bottom in administrative costs per pupil. And we have a cap already in place that restricts school districts from administrative spending. And so I think we need to be honest about hearing from our educators about those significant challenges with behavior, and not only address it from a human capital perspective, but also realizing that our school counselors have very restricted schedules now that don't allow them to meet kids where they are. And if we are true about that commitment to education and improving literacy outcomes, then we know that kids can't learn until they feel safe. And so improving our school counselor corps and ensuring that we have enough caring adults in every single elementary school and on up is going to absolutely pay off in reducing the amount of disruptions and crisis that we're experiencing in our classrooms.
I think you hit the talking point that we're going to hear anytime you talk about spending more money, the admin costs. We're paying superintendents too much. We have a superintendent on this stage. We have a former superintendent on this stage. How do you combat that? If it's not true, what do you say to someone out there who's going, you know what? I saw all these districts that are paying more than $100,000. That's where we can save money.
So this came up at some point. I will say this was brought up at the time when we were, I believe a former state superintendent had mentioned something about we need to feed all the children and we can use in Deer Creek we had $48.7 million just kind of hanging out. I didn't know that. That was amazing news to me. Really excited about that. And we came to a realization that maybe that money is meant to be used for bond issues that were approved by our local community versus being able to just spend on anything we want. So the conversation came up about, well, if you just cut back administrative costs by 6%, that's enough to be able to feed all your kids. I could have fired every administrator, including myself, and we still would have needed another $4 million to pull that off. We are limited, like Senator Hicks said, we cannot spend, most districts are capped at 5%, some are at 3% of total cost. Only 5% of that can go toward administrative fees. Using just my data, that's usually what I combat it with, is the data that we have that can be proven. And my district, for example, our administrative costs are at 1.8% of our budget. So we're well below that. I don't think there's a single district in Oklahoma that even comes close to the 5% cap.
So it's just misinformation that has kind of taken hold as a talking point. Is that what you guys see?
I think it's part of that, and I understand it, where there's always that frustration of, well, look how much the boss or the CEO is making, and that's crazy. And I understand that, and that usually leads into that whole piece there. But I will tell you that pushing the superintendents aside and just looking at our building principals, that job has gotten significantly more difficult. I was a building principal for 11 years, and it's been 10 years since I've been a building principal, and I look at the work that my principals do every day, and I'm in awe at the fact they keep coming back. How much they care about these kids and their teachers and their parents really just shows a level of dedication that should be admired rather than questioned.
And go into any rural district and you'll find a superintendent who's also a principal, who's also a bus driver, who's also doing maintenance. I mean, can you speak to kind of that role? They say, oh, these rural districts we can combine. You can't combine and make a kid go 90 miles to school.
Right. So, Wendy, back to the first question and the behavior thing. 60 counties since October 15th that I have put my feet in and listened to teachers, parents, and students. And the number one thing that comes up every single time is out of control behavior. On to the superintendent thing. In rural Oklahoma, you have to wear a lot of hats. I'll just use Freedom as an example. I was there as superintendent, principal, bus driver. We had a student that lived 28 miles from school. You could literally see the lights of Coldwater, Kansas from his front porch. And I picked that student up every single day and took him home every single day as superintendent. That's what everyone does. The Oklahoma way is everyone does what is necessary, and that includes those superintendents that are doing multiple jobs. It's pretty easy when you say you're the principal and superintendent of a district that has 120 kids, but if that district is a district of 602 square miles of mostly ranch land, there's a lot of things that come into play on that. And so, yeah, we can clean that up. I think superintendents across the state would be interested in, tell us what you think is best, and we will comply with that. And that's what we do with the cap every single day, every single school district. That cap is there, and we watch that, and we don't want to go over that. For that very reason. We don't want to be on the front page of the Daily Oklahoma.
Right. Before we leave the topic of behavior, if it is the number one issue, what are we doing wrong? Is it the parents? Is it us? Okay, Becky, let's hear it. She grabbed the mic. Buckle up.
I was going to discuss this as part of my question in a little bit, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now. It is the number one thing that my colleagues on the board and I are hearing about. We're hearing the stories. We're hearing the frustration. We're hearing that teachers are being blamed for the behavior. And so we have to, we as teachers know that it just takes one to shut down learning. And if we want to do better, and I actually said this at the board meeting on Thursday, if we want to get out of 50th in education, we can focus on literacy. We can focus on all those things, but unless we deal with behavior, we're not coming out of 50th. And so we have got to start looking at this as our reality and start doing some things on the ground level that is going to make a difference. These are behaviors that are beyond good classroom management. You're sitting amongst educators who do have wonderful classroom management skills. These are behaviors that are beyond that. And so Senator Hicks alluded to the need for counselors that are able to do that. I know there are districts, I think Deer Creek is one of them, tell me if I'm mistaken, where they are now have calm rooms, care rooms that they call them, within their districts where we're dealing with some of those behaviors. But that's something we're going to have to really look at as a state. Like Jamie said, I don't have the answer. I just know that it's a reality and it's something we've got to deal with. It may be something that we actually have to go to the extent of doing legislation about. And so that's...
Is part of the discussion taking one child where you say it is that severe? Should they be in a classroom with 29 other kids who do want to be there?
I think that's part of the issue.
Just part of it.
With public education, we don't have the luxury of saying, we're not going to take that kid. With all the emphasis now on parental choice and, all the money that's been sent over there, you are cutting funds from public schools. There are a lot of kids that absolutely need a one-on-one at a minimum.
And that costs money.
It all goes back to money. It all goes back to funding. And like you said, I would love to see legislation on something. Teachers are drowning. I don't think people realize the realities of what it is like to be a teacher in this year. And I can tell you 25 years ago, we didn't have the behaviors that we have now. When I'm saying behaviors, I'm talking about chairs being thrown at us. We're being hit. We're being kicked. And this is nationwide. This isn't just an Oklahoma problem. I talk to teachers all over the United States.
Our teachers are being physically assaulted is what you're telling me.
We are being physically assaulted.
And not just in the bad quote, quote districts. We're talking about all of them.
Well, I think that the kind of the topic we're circling around here has to do with special education needs that exist right now, and those continue to increase. Part of the struggle we're running into, though, and feel free to disagree if I'm going on the wrong page here, is that we're not getting enough qualified people going into that area of education. We talk about a teacher shortage. You look in the special education realm, it is humongous. And there are a lot of supplemental services that go along with that. Speech pathologists, school psychologists, occupational therapists, all those folks. And so what we're seeing is our greatest at-risk population of students are now being served by the least trained educators, and that's a real problem. And it's something that it's much bigger than even like the state can look at. You know, when we receive funding, the state does, from the federal level to help, you know, kind of offset some of the costs of being able to educate students with special needs. However, for now, yes, the federal government would consider fully funded at 30% of the cost that it would take to educate a student with special needs, and the state would pick up the rest. In Oklahoma, we receive 11%. That's what we get. The state can't make up that difference, and so then that kind of gets pushed back over to the district to try to offset that. And we will have these situations. I have one student in particular I can think of in my district who is so severe, it costs us $150,000 a year to educate that one student. I can't ask my legislator to pick up the tab on that, but I also can't ask that kid to be in a regular ed classroom or even in a lot of my special education classrooms. Because it's not fair to the teachers, it's not fair to the kids.
This is a hard conversation.
Yes, it's very
when you're
complex.
talking about where that child should be, how much resources to allocate for maybe that one child, but it's something we've got to talk about because legally you have to provide that education.
And I know I'm just basically like admiring the problem, and I think the solution really is that we do need to focus more in that area of special education. How are we preparing more teachers to go into that field? How are we incentivizing them to go into it?
Right.
Because right now, I wouldn't do it. It's a lot that they're taking on, and God bless them too.
Don't want to weigh in.
When I got in the principal's office, I was the 7th through 12th grade behavior specialist. Now we are going outside of that, and there are certified behavior specialists that are working with those children, both contractually and both on staff. That's an added expense behind the curtain, $150,000 on one student. And then you figure in the cost of educating the children that need certified behavior specialists has grown immensely in my time in education.
So is that something our legislature needs to be aware of when talking about funding? They're like, oh, well, look, you have, I've heard, though, you have record funding, or, I've heard the talking points.
Well, Senator Carrie Hicks knows. You don't have to tell her.
So Senator Hicks, how do you combat that? By saying, oh, you just keep asking for more money, you just want to throw more money, and that's not working. How do you present this information in a way that makes sense to some of our lawmakers?
I mean, I think you've heard it, right? And if you're asking the questions of the folks that you represent, you're hearing these stories very frequently. And so, I mean, my question to my colleagues when they're like, well, how much is enough? I said, go talk to your superintendent and ask.
Are your colleagues talking to educators in their communities?
I mean, there are probably more than you would assume based on their voting record. I do believe that, most of the folks that I serve with want to do well for their constituents and want to do well for their communities. And I mean, these are not clear-cut answers. I mean, just by the variety that's on this panel tonight, you'll understand we probably, even though we all come out of, the education environment, we probably all have very different personal feelings on different topics. Being at the elementary level versus the high school level, you're going to see things from a different lens. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us as lawmakers to wrestle with the difficulty and the complexity of these issues, understanding that obviously, for special education certified individuals, there is a federal requirement of a 5% bump in pay. One of the things that I'm looking at this year is an additional 5% to hard-to-fill positions, which could bring that total for those instructors up to a 10% pay increase.
You say hard-to-fill special ed, are counselors in that category?
I mean, I would say the hard-to-fill positions are really, we're looking at geography. we're also looking at specialty. And so when you're thinking about higher level math courses and you're thinking about, what your availability is for your student population, this gives superintendents and principals, honestly, that flexibility to meet kids where they are. And so I'm very well aware of these concerns. I'm in classrooms all the time. I have 3 students of my own, my kids, who are in our public schools and Putnam City schools. And so these are conversations that we're having every night around the dinner table and trying to really understand how we thread the needle to make sure that we're not leaving our most vulnerable students behind.
Final question on this topic, because I've heard from a lot of educators that say, years ago I would call the parent or let them know, your child did X, Y, Z, and I trust you, I take your word for it. Parents are less likely than to reach out to the teacher with a concern. They tend to go on social media, or they go to the superintendent, or we've lost that kind of more intimate, the teacher is there. You have a line of communication. Is it frustrating? And is that hurting us when we go then to speak on the loud megaphone to the public, our grievances, rather than finding a solution with the person working with my child?
I mean, I would always ask folks what their intention is. If you're looking for a solution, the public, it's the soapbox, right, of our day. They're not going to bring you a solution to the challenge that you're facing. And so if your intention is to truly do better for your child in your public school, then it makes sense that you would bring that concern first to the classroom teacher, then to the building principal. If you feel like it's not getting resolved, there's a team of specialists in every single school site that I know to be very responsive. And so, I have friends that have their students in Edmond, and one mom was just like, I just feel like I need to vent, and then I feel like you're going to help me understand the clarity of where I need to go with this. And I'm like, have you talked to your child's teacher? No. And I'm like, okay. Start there. I'm telling you, you have a shared goal, which is that you and the teacher are on the same team, which is team student.
Why did we lose that? Why did that was the first instinct for so long, and now it's like doesn't even pop into our head?
I don't know. I've always, even I'm sure in corporate, you've got a chain of command, and there are teachers who I know for a fact that spend their whole planning time contacting parents. So not only are we, from the behaviors, not only are we losing our planning. When you say we've got all this time, no, we don't. Most teachers get there an hour early, stay, I don't even want to say how many hours after, and it is to contact parents and let them know what's going on.
Let's move on, Dr. Perez, to question number 2. What does meaningful support for educators actually look like? Beyond policy, beyond getting the money you need, what do you really want to see to feel supported?
So I tried to think about this from different levels because, teacher support isn't just, well, the principal will figure it out. It's varies. So at the school level, I do think that teachers need principals who grow new teachers and provide autonomy to high-achieving educators as well. It's great. I love being a principal and being able to do car duty and lunch duty and taking a little bit of that burden off of my teachers. But I've also had principals before that's all they did all day long, which is admirable, and they were sure loved by their teachers, but nobody was growing under that individual. A principal needs to be spending time in that classroom and helping to bring up that next generation of educators, but also not ignoring the all-stars. We need to give them autonomy and make them feel like professionals. At the district level, I as a superintendent, I have a responsibility too. I need to shield teachers from a barrage of new initiatives, whether they are things that are, kind of that top-down stuff, or if I just come up with some great idea. Everybody's afraid of that. So instead of, I've got the silver bullet, guys, this software program is going to educate all kids now. Plus I got to, steak dinner or whatever. We need to push that aside and instead cultivate a culture where we're pushing for a little bit of work-life balance for our educators. Jamie, you made me cringe with your little comment about that they come in an hour early and stay who knows when. That is unacceptable.
I know. As a 25-year veteran, I know better.
And we have to continue to push that narrative to our teachers. And you know what? Some of them won't listen, and that's okay. But I think being told time and again from the top that go home. It's okay for you to have a life. Use that out-of-office assistant. Shut down your take your email off your phone, do all those things. Don't give out your cell phone number, for crying out loud. Any of those sorts of things. Superintendent needs to be doing those sorts of things. At the state level, legislators really need to be prioritizing bills. There's so many bills. It's crazy. And we need to be prioritizing bills that actually impact learning over those that just garner headlines or yes, or favor at the national level. I mean, there needs to be support for learning over just punishing outcomes. And that's the support I think teachers need at the state level. And then at home, honestly, parents need to prioritize education by getting their kids to school. In Oklahoma, 1 out of every 4 children, they are chronically absent. We can't educate, we can't get out of the bottom rungs of education in this nation if we don't have kids actually walking through the door. So if parents want to help at home, get your kid to school.
It seems so simple, but it's such a big
Well, it's been really
problem.
hard this week.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know.
So I don't really know
I've got
why.
3 at home that they won't go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like about 8,200 to walk through the doors tomorrow
Yeah.
at a certain place I think can think of.
I think the work-life balance, that's something I really haven't heard brought up in the profession, just to even to make someone want to go into it. If I know I can have that work-life balance, that might change my mind a little bit, right? It might be worth it.
This generation of workers that are coming in, they have an expectation for that. They want to be able to have a life beyond their career, and I want them to. They should. All of us should. I want that for myself too. We have to push that narrative more. We have to have that expectation and not think that you're being lazy because you actually want to spend time with your spouse or your best friend or your dog or your television.
Because you'll be a better teacher, right? If
You
all
will
those other
recharge your
needs
battery
are
and you'll be
met.
better. You'll be good to go the next day.
Becky, did you have something to weigh in on that?
I was going to comment on the chronic absenteeism. I read this week a statistic that said that out of every 10 days missed from a student, it's like missing 6 months of school. That
Just
should be a
because
wake-up call to
the
parents.
falling behind,
Yes.
the out of routine, the not feeling connected, all of those things.
All of the above.
That's staggering. And we have so many kids, especially I know I'm an OKCPS mom in our rural district. I mean, in our urban districts, it's a huge problem. I mean, there are signs outside of my child's elementary school. Please come to school. Come to school. If everyone gets a pizza party, if everyone just comes to school today. And I thought, wow, but it must be that big of a deal.
I was just going to go back to the work-life balance point. When I was in my first couple of years in the classroom, I mean, I really watched the veteran teachers. I watched how they were able to kind of sequence their day. I'm like, how are they getting out of here on time? How are they getting everything done? We're using all, we're basically aligned our lesson plans. We're doing all the same stuff. Why is it taking me so much longer? And I think veteran teachers who are highly qualified have it down to an art form of, we're doing this and then we're doing this and then we're doing this and then I'm going home because we've got to, get to the baseball game or, I have to be present for my own family. And I'm really grateful that I had role models in Deer Creek schools that showed me how to manage and balance and prioritize the things that were most essential for my students. Decorating the classroom door, not a priority. It looks great. Maybe it makes, you feel warm and fuzzy, and maybe you need that for a specific, I can think of a couple of months where we need to feel warm and fuzzy in the buildings. But, really prioritizing the things that are going to make a difference for my students. Prepping all my lesson plans before I walk out the door, and I'm ready to roll the minute I walk through that door the next morning.
So what happens,
Peace of mind.
Sorry to interrupt, what happens then if you have all these veteran teachers now who are retiring or left, and you've got all these new teachers coming in who don't have anyone to model that for them?
I think that's the biggest challenge that we're facing right now.
I tell them to leave at 3:45. As I'm walking out of the door, my contract time is at 3:45, and I am out the door at 3:46. And I tell everybody in my pod, it's time to go home. It's time to go home. Because if we're pouring from an empty cup, there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to walk into that classroom.
It's
the
the
next day.
oxygen mask coming down in the plane, right?
And I don't want teachers that are staying a little longer to feel guilty that they're doing that. And let me get this straight too, is that there are times where we have to work longer. We have an IEP meeting or a parent-teacher conference or this special event that happens. Those things are going to happen. It just shouldn't be the norm. It should be the exception to the rule. And you should be able to get your things wrapped up and, find that rhythm that works for you.
Is there something we're asking teachers to do that is taking up too much time that's not actually helping our kids?
It's the little things, Wendy, that start piling up, I started thinking about this when I was a principal. Let's talk about testing season. And this is elementary. This is elementary life. How do we prep for testing season? Well, first of all, we start doing study guides 3 months in advance that the kids hate and the teachers hate grading. And then as we get closer to time, we're going to decorate our doors. Well, that takes 4 hours in an elementary school per teacher because for some reason, that'll raise test scores. And then we are going to record a video where we do a silly dance, and then we're going to do a pep assembly. We're going to have dress-ups all week. We just keep adding these little things onto our teachers because we think that it's going to produce this better outcome for kids. And what I found was that the school that I remember doing this the most, and we achieved really well. We did a great job. But it just kind of dawned on me, like, this really should not be our focal point. If we're just doing our job, the test scores will come. And so at that point was when I told my teachers, we're done. I hated dressing up anyway. But I said, we're done with all of this mandatory stuff. We're not going to do all these things. We're not going to try to find an OU football player to come and give us a speech and do all that. We're just going to do our job through the day. And you know what it did? It just relieved the stress. And we did the testing and we did the thing. And that's what I'm still trying to push to this day.
Because I think, and y'all probably already know this, but as a parent, my kids pick up on that stress. All of a sudden, they think it's a big deal, and I'm thinking, what happened since I was a kid to now? Everything has changed. For us, it was, here's how you fill in the bubble, do your best, eat breakfast, don't forget. And now my kids, they're gearing up. They're talking about it months in advance. They can feel the stress, and I have to wonder, how much of a toll that's taking on you guys.
As a former third grade teacher who is now seeing a big push for the third grade retention that Oklahoma once figured out.
We'll be getting to that.
Okay, never mind.
We'll be getting to that.
That's where it came from.
I mean, I would also just say, I mean, when I taught fourth grade math and science, and obviously, they weren't tested on science, that's a fifth grade level, but obviously we're pushing because it's all vocabulary. But that fourth grade math test and the fourth grade reading test, I was absolutely appalled at the student response towards testing, because everything in the environment that we were learning in obviously was like, hey, we're gonna do a test review with pie in the face, and we're gonna do a test review with Jenga blocks, and it was like incorporating play-based practice lessons, because I was like, guys, all of this material, so now we're gonna review, and it was self-led. I'll just own up to that, Superintendent. But I was on a team of teachers. We were departmentalized, and so we had, boot camp, which was really just fun. And so we would do all kinds of silly, games to try and relieve all of that anxiety, and also to know that you're going to be sitting for a lot of hours in the coming weeks. And so we're going to get up.
I hear kids learn really well by having to sit for a lot of hours too. I think I read that. So let's talk about, you mentioned the retention issue. That's a big one, and you guys already know literacy. It's like the buzzword of this session before it even starts. Carrie, yeah? It is. We do want to improve literacy. So often described foundation of education. We've heard, hey, if you can't read, then you can't do anything else in education. So where do you see the biggest opportunities or gaps when it comes to improving literacy in Oklahoma? We talked about the behavioral issues, so I'm sure that's up there. Anything else? And sure, Craig McVeigh.
Wendy, a generation ago now, we had the #1 rated early childhood intervention program in the world. And if you think that that didn't have an effect on literacy, then it absolutely did. We identified those kids early, sooner start, early intervention. They identified those kids early, and then they sent them to, back in those days, PK was barely even thought of, and it was a half day. The funding became available to make PK full-time. And then, so you had those screeners out there, and we went completely away from that. This period of austerity that we've lived through now, where we took the funding away from those programs. At the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, we had the #1 rated career and vocational technical program in the world and we got away from completely funding that as well. And even so, I say the world because during those days, the French sent a delegation to Oklahoma, and they copied our vocational technical
We
program.
were the Mississippi Miracle?
Yes, we were in France.
We gotta be like Oklahoma?
They are still using our vocational technical
That we
high
stopped.
school collaboration that we taught them a generation ago. So that should give you a little bit of a clue about what's coming.
You need to stop reading off our notes.
Sorry, y'all.
Same
Sorry,
thing
didn't mean to
here.
jump y'all.
Same thing about pre-K. I mean, the early childhood piece. The earlier that we're working with these kids, we're giving them the starting blocks to be able to really sprint right out the gate there.
And finding issues early on, finding exactly what the issue is, knowing what sort of plan and work, because what I've learned in looking at this issue is you can't repeat a grade and do the exact same thing and expect results. It's about that plan in that year, and how do you do that? You do that with intervention, you do that with reading specialists. So is that part of the discussion when we talk about tackling literacy?
Yeah. And I mean, to go back to your original question, I mean, there's nothing but opportunity at this point in time. I think the more critical question is, are we willing to invest to make it successful?
And not just 1 year. It
Correct.
sounds, back to your pre-K example.
Yeah. So
It's gonna have to be
today
continuous.
the Democrats, so the Senate and House Democrats laid out Oklahoma's commitment, which is an 8-year plan for public schools. And in that plan, we've identified at least 6 top issues for this particular calendar year. And then looking forward, have a long-term vision of where investments need to be made, targeted investments. So obviously the workforce is a massive issue for our entire state. Looking at that teacher pay raise, making sure that we are prioritizing those hard to fill positions. Outside of that, it's professional development. And so I've gone through the science of reading training. I have my credential, and making sure that those funds are available at no cost to the participants and at no cost to the districts, to make sure that all pre-K through 3rd grade teachers prioritized first to be able to go through that science of reading, letters training, the professional development piece. It's not curriculum. So let me underscore that, because I think when people hear science of reading, they assume it's a textbook, they assume it's curriculum. It's not. It will absolutely change the way we teach students how to read, but it is not curriculum.
How many of our K through 3 teachers right now are trained in the science of reading? Anybody up here know?
We don't have the data reporting piece yet, but that is a part of our package, is to truly be able to track. One of the things that I worked with Senator Adam Pugh on was on creating the credentialing badge for the teacher dashboard, because we're not currently tracking. And so when we had grant funds from the federal government to do the letters training, they didn't have the tracking piece in place. And so my question consistently to the department was, how many folks have been trained? Where are they? You know, is it working? Are we seeing outcomes? And it was like, we've trained X amount of people. And I'm like, great. Are they teaching? Like, how do we know if, anyways, so we're working on really kind of tightening up that piece, because we know that the public dollars deserve public transparency, and there's a public accountability here, which means we need to be able to definitively say, you know, 90% of the teachers in our early childhood classrooms have been trained in the science of reading, and look at the improvement that that's made for our
And
students.
Becky, I would assume our Board of Education wants that data as well. Is that something you're pushing for?
You know, I ask for data all the time, and I will tell you in the past
We want to hear you.
yes, it is something that we ask for repeatedly. It is getting better. It is more, I will tell you, it's more transparent. We got emails today with some reports as well, and so we don't feel like we're completely in the dark anymore. And so, yes, we want to see those numbers. We want to see how we can best use those teachers throughout our state. You know, if we have 20 of them, you know, that have this micro-credential, we don't want them all in, you know, in one district or one building, or, you know.
Is there a fear that this literacy train is going to ride into town and then drive off next year, and then we'll move on to something else?
I think that's the important statement of the night right there, because Senator Hicks just said that we have an 8-year plan coming. The proposal's for an 8-year plan. I'm old enough to remember in the mid-teens back in maybe 2014, there was a proposal from Representative Lee Denny of Cushing and Senator Halligan of Stillwater, members of the Republican Party, that pushed this 8-year plan for education now a generation ago, almost. At the same time that Mississippi was starting, we had the ability to start. And that plan failed because it added a bunch of unfunded mandates that didn't go along with literacy. And so that 8-year plan went away. We have to have a consistent plan in place over multiple years to beat this.
Yeah, we have to see it through. I think every educator in this room can speak to the fact how many things we've seen come through, and they repeatedly come through, and they just have a new name attached to them. And so the commitment, funding-wise, has to be there. The commitment to see it through has to be there, so that we can see those results.
I mean, this summer, even though I've taught for 25 years, I actually did go through the Science of Reading program with Orthan Gillingham. It was amazing. I have not been letters trained. I do know that they go in conjunction, hand in hand. The Orthan Gillingham is expensive. I have talked to gubernatorial candidates. I've talked to other legislators about the importance of, when we're talking about professional development, that it has to be meaning professional development. There is a funding issue there with that. I know that we had to sign up early to be able to attend this training, and even in, I'm a former special education teacher. Even in my training, I learned so much. Now I feel qualified. I can go, hire me. If you need me to go to around schools, that's perfect. Now I am highly qualified to teach the other, ones coming in that may not have the materials, that may not have the training, but that's why we honestly need to utilize veteran teachers as much as possible, because even this veteran teacher, I learned so much learning about the science of reading. So
it was a big key in talking to the folks, the advocates in Mississippi, who really saw their success through, because they first passed some measures that didn't get the funding and it didn't work. Luckily, they were able to come back and get them funded, but they were serious. They had to stay on them. And I'm wondering if we have what it takes to stay on the legislature. And she said also, one of the advocates said that their state Department of Education took it seriously as well, took those mandates and said, okay, we are going to hire the best of these reading specialists. So it's a whole piece. And how can you, let's say you pass your 8-year plan, is anyone signing their name in blood? Yeah, we're going to do this for 8 years. Or, are we going to forget about it?
I mean, that's always the question, right? We have provisions that basically say we can't bind future legislatures by the measures that we're passing. But I mean, honestly, anything that we pass is going to bind future legislatures, whether it's a rolling obligation, a continuing obligation through funding. And so, I mean, I just so ever delicately push back on some of these notions, because I'm like, if we can have an 8-year plan for roads and bridges.
Amen.
And we were bottom of the barrel in bridges, then
49th.
Why are our students any less important of an investment? If we can patch potholes, then we can absolutely give our students and teachers the support and the meaningful investments that they deserve.
You guys are rolling into question 4. It's great. Given our history with initiatives that didn't last, how should Oklahoma evaluate outside models and decide what truly fits our schools? There is some skepticism of, oh, you're just going to copy paste this, or, this is a silver bullet. Is it always fair to look to another state and just say, okay, well, we're copying them. We've got this. It's done.
I think it's really fair. I think we ought to look at Massachusetts, and we should do exactly what they're doing. Now, all of y'all out there, get your phones out and Google per pupil expenditures for Massachusetts.
And teacher pay.
And teacher pay. And then when you're done Googling that, Google Kansas and Google Missouri. And what you're going to find is that all of those comparisons are great. What Mississippi has done is absolutely a miracle. It is absolutely great. The per pupil expenditure that we are $1.2 billion behind
It's
the
worse.
regional average, not Massachusetts.
No, I'm talking about the regional average. I have new numbers.
Okay.
Are you ready?
You're
Thank you,
hearing it
Sid.
here
Thank
first.
you,
This is
Sid.
breaking
Give us the
news.
Give us the new
Give us the
numbers
new
here.
data.
So according to the Oklahoma State School Boards Association, they always put out education facts, and these are estimates, so the actual number might be a little bit higher, but the rough estimate is that we are $3,000 per student behind the average, just the regional average. We're not talking about Massachusetts. We're not talking about anyone outside of our region. $3,000 per student, and if you estimate, which we've seen, we're at about 700,000 public school students. That's $2.1 billion behind the regional investment.
We're not comparing Massachusetts. This is our neighbors. This is, wow.
And so we
We do-
love
we're-
to talk about rankings, and I want to talk about that later. But yeah, but I will say, if you want to talk about rankings for per pupil expenditure, 49th. That's where we sit at. And so I know that there is rhetoric that's out there that sometimes it's spread like, oh, we're wasting money in education in Oklahoma. You get what you pay for. And, you know, we want to be able to raise things up. I have no problem with what Mississippi's done. I don't mind looking at their model. I don't mind the Oklahoma Competes initiative that the state chamber has. We have to fund all of these pieces in order to provide the supports to our students and to our teachers to be able to make these things happen. And then it's that long-term leadership commitment to not mess with it once we get it going.
Is it going to take the public holding our leaders accountable, saying, no, 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 no. We knew it was going to take 8 years. You got to keep going, keep going, keep going.
I think in Mississippi, what the miracle is that they came up with a plan, and they invested in that plan, and then they implemented that plan, and then they showed fidelity to that plan. Our plan that we had in 2014, if it would have been in place, and we would have done what Mississippi did, we would be talking about the Oklahoma miracle right now. I'm fully convinced of that. It's going to take commitment. And let's go back to roads and bridges. At the same time that we became 50th this summer, roads and bridges became 4th. And when they asked, what did it take to move us from 49th in 2005 in roads and bridges to 4th this summer, Kim Gatz said it took billions of dollars. If we can commit to roads and bridges, we can find the commitment to kids.
Yeah,
And just for another quick little math lesson, because what I hear, is we don't have $2.1 billion. It just can't be found. That is a political decision. That is a policy decision. Because during my time in the legislature, and I was elected in 2018, we have actually cut $1.6 billion from our state budget. So, again, it is a policy decision, and it's about priorities, and it's about keeping our commitments to our children and our families.
how much is in that rainy day fund since you're up here?
So,
In it billions?
as you're
Billions?
Googling out there, Google how much money is in our rainy day fund, and then how much money is in the revenue stabilization fund, and then how much money was appropriated last year and not spent. That's going to be about $5 billion or so dollars.
So when someone says we simply don't have the money, not true. Okay.
In the last week of the session last year, and I think it was maybe in the last couple of days, we found $300 million. I think we found $300 million so we could buy a private prison.
Yeah.
That's $300 million. That's a lot of money. We gave $250 million to vouchers, and I think someone's going to probably talk about that. But
Is that
that's
on your list?
that's
y'all
toward
gave-
that billions of dollars. That it is a political decision. Let's change. Let's come together as a state and say we don't want to be 50th. And I think the time is now. I don't think Oklahomans want to be 50th.
Well, now I have to tell everybody my kids are as important as roads and bridges. I think that's the new.
Potholes. They're more important than potholes. I can tell you that.
All right, we're going with it. Before we leave this conversation, do y'all want to? I know there's a lot of talk and opinions about this whole third grade retention, and that was part of the Mississippi Miracle. They did not deviate from their mandatory parents can intervene, like this is the way it's going to be, and they say that was a key to it. And so we've got legislation proposed in both chambers now to bring back Oklahoma's retention model. They say, well, it's part of the Mississippi Miracle. What are we doing? I mean, is it a good idea to hold kids back if we're not doing anything else differently?
So the truth in the Mississippi model is that that was the last piece. And so if we are coming out of the gate with that as the number one piece, we are already setting ourselves up for failure. As a classroom teacher, I know that a third grade retention, if nothing changes and you hold a student back for another academic year, what the data shows is that by 8th grade, any gains are gone
They're gone.
if the student doesn't receive ongoing supports.
They're gone.
Because learning to read and then reading to learn are two separate things. And so that's really where the science of reading comes in with comprehension and vocabulary. So by 8th grade, those gains are gone. And then what we also know as a piece of retention is that high school graduate dropout increases. So we have to be honest about the plan, which means we have to invest in early interventions before retention is even a part of the conversation.
Can I take this one, Carrie? People that know me know I'm a little vocal in my group about how I feel as a classroom teacher, how I feel as an early childhood teacher. For anyone that is listening, we cannot start these interventions in 3rd grade. It's too late. We're done. We're done. You cannot start teaching a child how to read when they come into the 3rd grade. 3rd grade, we're off and running with a test. We don't have, we're not, when I was teaching 3rd grade, we're not looking back. Like, I don't have time. I've got to teach you about this test. We have got to get these early interventions in pre-K, kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. I'm a 2nd grade teacher. Like I said, I went through the science of reading this summer to be a better teacher, to be able to get those kids when they're ready to go into 3rd grade. I want them ready to be able to hit the ground running. We cannot look at 3rd grade retention. When I was teaching 3rd grade, my smartest student, I will never forget, this sweet little precious blonde, probably one of the smartest kids I've ever had. Her mom called me that morning and she said, I can't bring her in today. She is thrown up all the way from our house. She said, I've had to pull the car over 4 times. And I thought, what are we doing to this 8-year-old? I had a boy one time, never forget, banged his head so hard on the desk, and I'm sitting right beside him while he's taking this 3rd grade test. He's so scared of being retained. He banged his head so many times on that table, I had to call into my principal because he opened a wound. We can't do this. We can't do this again. We cannot put the pressure on 3rd graders to be able to say, we're going to judge you off of this one test, which is, we know better. We know the science of reading tells us we've got to get these kids in early childhood. I don't know if we're going to talk about the 20,000 teachers that we have working an untraditional path, I guess. It's so important that we have teachers who know what they're doing in these early foundations, in these early grades. Get these kids with these foundations.
So you're telling me a warm body in a 2nd grade classroom is not enough?
It's not going to help you.
Weird. Okay.
It's not.
It's good
it
enough
is
for
not.
50th.
It's groundbreaking.
It's good enough for 50th. We're happy with that.
And my husband is an alternative certified teacher. He's an amazing teacher.
We've heard wonderful stories about folks
He's
coming
great.
through that path.
He's
but
great. They're great. But when we're talking about the early foundations of reading and learning how to read, training, education, experience, those 3 things need to be at the forefront. But we cannot put the burden back on these 3rd grade kids. I'm sorry.
Is there a fear that we're going to ask for all these things this session, and then they're going to just pick the easy one? Let's retain the kids. Because the warning I've gotten is that could harm children.
Yeah, yeah, that's my fear. Truly. And, when the state chamber announced their kind of initiative a couple of months ago, I was mad for about 24 hours, and then I got over myself and I got curious. So I was like, all right, let's learn everything there is to know about this model, because I should just be thankful, truly, that now everyone wants to talk about literacy, and I'm a reading interventionist, and I'm ready to have that conversation. And so, by learning that process and understanding, this is not the way they did it. And so if we actually are sincere, and I'm going to put a little weight and emphasis on that word, but if we are sincere in improving children's opportunities and providing a great education for everyone, this retention law before intervention is not the way to go.
Carrie, you know what they need to do? Ask a teacher.
Wow.
Ask me.
When
Ask
the
me.
when we passed the Reading Sufficiency Act that had that third grade retention piece in it a few years ago, I was approached while I was superintendent at El Reno, where the federal penitentiary is, and I was approached by the warden, who told me at lunch one day, can we talk about this automatic retention program? This was in that time period, and he told me that all the federal penitentiary inmates, the retention rate is 70%. Is that really what we want our children to be attached to? Is this this pathway to prison? So let's screen them early. Let's find out early. And we also had T1 programs back in the day. And I think there's a movement now to maybe take a look at that again.
You mentioned multiple people coming forward with various plans. How do you navigate that? We've got some big money behind some of these plans, these folks coming in from out of state, and teachers say they're not feeling heard. How do we navigate that when someone comes in and says, pass this, here's the bill, they'll write them for you. I know you know. So what are we doing? I mean, why aren't we taking these proposals and writing them in legislation? Why are we letting someone hand us things?
Well, I don't work that way. But, I mean, the plug and play kind of legislation that, specific interest groups are pushing, that's not my mode of operation. And I think that if we're sincere about righting the ship and giving our kids a brighter future, then it has to be from the bottom up. It cannot be from the top down. And so really one of the most important things I learned in my conversations with folks on the ground in Mississippi who are a part of those plans and processes is that it was a true partnership and it was a true collaboration. So these were not vendors, these were not new software programs and XYZ, but these were collaborative efforts to really understand what was necessary in aligning the screening tools, the data, and the curriculum to the training and the implementation. And so it is not a one and done. It is not a pass a retention and we're going to magically be better. Because my question back is, what happens in that year? Are they repeating the year with the same teacher who's possibly unqualified? I mean, these are the questions because we already know what our class sizes look like. And if, again, they're saying that we're going to have this mandatory third grade retention and there's not new investment, this is absolutely disastrous when you're thinking about the class sizes and the capacity in our system to be able to address those.
Better to do nothing
needs.
than to pass the retention law without any resources added. Am I hearing that?
I think that's fair.
Is that a conversation that's happening in our State Board of Education? Are you guys eyeing
It's
that
actually not a
topic?
conversation we've had yet.
Maybe we should ask a teacher and a state board member. That would be a different approach.
Or a state board member that was a teacher?
Wow.
I'm just actually shocked because it's such, as you said, this is a conversation that we're all having, and the folks on our Board of Education have not even discussed it.
Well, and I'll say, I mean, all the board members go through Senate confirmation, and so I have the opportunity to be able to meet all of them individually. And, I have had individual one-on-one conversations with many of our State Board of Education members who are, hey, I heard you on something and I need to know about that, and so developing those relationships and building that trust, I think is incredibly important. One of the other models that I've learned about and I also believe would be revolutionary for Oklahoma is our Department of Defense schools. Or the Department of War schools. Our DoD has a long-term strategic plan for all of the schools that they operate, and it is so good. It is so good, and it is a massive success story for American education.
We've lost some of our local teachers. I know I lost one of my kids' counselors to a DoD school in Germany because you're seeing this is the reality. We're losing folks even to those kinds of schools because there's a plan there.
And I think the most compelling argument that I've found as a bridge builder through these conversations is a military readiness conversation about the fact that if we don't have literacy rates at a rate which will help support our economy and support our workforce, it is also a military readiness issue if we don't have individuals who can then work in these incredibly critical jobs to make sure that we are able to thrive and flourish. And so the DoD model, you know, I've got slides if anyone wants to see their data.
Come to Carrie's TED Talk.
It is incredibly compelling, and they have the results to show what worked and why. And it was a long-term commitment to sustainable funding.
I'm hearing a theme. We're also hearing some great questions from our audience members. I'm told some of you guys have something you'd like to ask, and I think we're going to use some of our volunteers to ask those questions for us.
Yes, hello, I'm Taylor Bishop. I'm the current Miss Collinsville with the Miss Oklahoma organization. I also happen to be a former substitute teacher, the daughter of an educator and the granddaughter of an educator, so I'm very passionate about this. And I'm joined by two more volunteers over here in the audience. We have Reese Launchball, the current Miss Green Country's teen, as well as Holly Caliban, the current Miss Grand Lakes teen. So we want to thank them for volunteering as well. But I'll get started with your first audience question. Patricia from the audience wants to know, how can we improve teacher efficiency in Oklahoma schools?
I can jump in on that one first. You know, you improve efficiency by basically trying to like clear the pathway for them. So many times in our districts, we run a mile wide, but about an inch deep, because we have 1,000 different initiatives. Because again, here's the latest silver bullet, here's another one. We've got 52 different types of reading interventions that we're using in a district, and it gets confusing for teachers to keep up with these things, but we keep piling more and more of those on. What if instead of like looking for the shiny thing, that innovative thing that makes the district look really, really great on social media, we just got really, really good at the things that have the biggest impact on students and really just focused in on that, simplified this process a little bit more for teachers so that they knew what their pathway was and everybody could just be swimming in the same direction.
Let
versus
teachers do
bouncing
their
all over the place.
jobs without interference. I can't imagine that.
I think that there needs to, you know, sometimes teachers will say, you know, well, just let me do my job, and there's a misunderstanding there that teachers are not afraid of accountability either.
Right.
They will
love
respect accountability. They will respect having standards. It's not just like, well, go teach dinosaur units all the sort of thing. Our newer teachers, they need a more prescriptive curriculum until they get that process down. Our veteran teachers need more autonomy. But what they don't need are more initiatives.
Correct.
If we could back off on those things, we can go a lot farther, in my opinion.
What if we had
I'm getting a note that the question was actually, it had a typo in it, and they wanted to know more about teacher efficacy, not
Thank you for the-
efficiency.
well, but still a great question. So efficacy, okay.
Yes.
Anybody want to weigh in on that?
I have no idea what that means. But let me, so if teacher efficacy and teacher effectiveness could be managed in this way, I think we would build our teacher corps. If we had a system that valued a pre-test and a post-test from our bank of test questions that Oklahoma State Department of Education already owns, and we weren't paying gazillions of dollars for testing, and we did that in-house, and we let those teachers prove their efficacy in that manner, I think we would see that teachers need to teach. They need to have the power to do that, and that they're not spending 3 months or 4 months or 9 months teaching the test. Let's let our experienced teachers teach our inexperienced teachers how this goes, and let's let them teach. But again, I'm the dinosaur here. That's the way I was taught. I went through a student teaching program. I was put in the classroom, and about 5 years later, I thought, wow, I think I might have this down. And there was no such thing as testing back there. One day, one ITBS per year, and that was it. Now we have to have tests not to prove that our kids can learn, but that our schools might not be doing the job they're supposed to be doing.
And you mentioned
and I
something,
think
the big money behind a lot of those testings.
So
Follow the money, too.
I don't know how much, Senator, how much we spend on testing, but
It's millions.
does
Are you,
anyone know?
Paula?
Sandra, do you know? 40
Yeah,
million. We're spending
millions.
$40 million. We could publish our own tests
We could.
right down there at the University of Oklahoma. That's what Kansas does at the University of Kansas Press. But we're not. We're spending $40 million with the educational industrial complex.
And that's the problem. They're very powerful.
Are you Paula? Are you the one that asked the question? Patricia, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Well, I'll just say that the most effective professional development that I received when I was in the classroom is observational rounds. And so watching highly skilled educators teach, there's nothing more beautiful to me than that. And so going in really to, I was working on my master's in early childhood, and so, I would seek out those classrooms to see a variety of styles of teaching. And here's the tricky thing is that really great teachers make it look easy, and it is not. And so you understand, oh my gosh, how did she set this particular procedure up with her students? She's got call and response. They're all engaged. They're transitioning. They're doing all these things. The sequencing of questions. I mean, watching effective educators teach is mind-blowing.
Follow up, because I've heard a lot of teachers say that they are just burning time going to some really useless professional development. Would we be better off letting teachers take those days then?
Yes.
To
Well, and I mean,
Yes.
I would use my time in the building. So if I had a planning period or, extra time in the day, I would use my time to go watch those educators while they had students in the classroom. And Oklahoma City Public Schools recently, bore out the fruit of some really painful months in the Pathways to Greatness. And by putting these STEM labs in every single elementary school, one of the things was that, a lot of them didn't get any professional development around being able to utilize all of these new resources. And so through a PTA grant, they were like, I taught STEM. So they were like, can you come in and do some professional development with our teachers? And I said, sure. Number one, tell me what you want, because nothing was even out of the packages. So they paid me to go in and set the entire classroom up. And I said, the most effective way for these teachers to really understand how amazing a STEM education is by letting me teach their students. And they were like, no, you can come to the staff meeting. And I was like, no. I'm just bring in like 3 classes at a time and it'll be fine. And we're going to do, we're going to do snap circuits and we're going to make light bulbs light up in electricity with Play-Doh, and we're going to do all these things because sometimes you really need to see it with students to understand the impact of the sequencing and scope of the questions, because the natural inclination is to want to help, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to help your students, but that play-based discovery, especially in an elementary setting, is so critical for them to be able to make the connections on their own. And then you can go in and explain, like, I noticed some of you guys tried these other things. What happened when you did that? They're going to tell you, okay, but then I saw you go back and you redid it. Tell me how you knew how to redo that. And they're just like thrilled to share what they discovered through that play-based discovery. And so again, I think the most effective professional development is seeing a highly trained educator with kids do what they do best.
So I have this one little small story here. I spent 7 years in the basement teaching in a rural public school next door to the most incredible, effective teacher I ever knew. 7 years, and he was a Spanish teacher. I'm a social studies teacher. He's a Spanish teacher. And he would teach his lesson, and he taught Spanish, and Kelly Forbes is in the audience here, and I'm looking right at Kelly. He taught Spanish by teaching those kids verbs. So after the first few days of hearing Levántese, Siéntese, Obrese Lubra, I began learning from him. And so you talk about effective teaching. It was next door to me. And so I went to him and I said, hey, I want to teach social studies through the verbs. And he was like, no. You don't have enough training to pull that off. And I didn't. So I think that just seeing those great teachers model for other teachers, it rubbed off on me. And I'm certain that it rubs off on a lot of them.
The State Department did a survey just recently, you're aware, of parents and educators. And there were 3 areas in which parents and educators could agree that were concerns for them. And one of those was teacher quality and teacher effectiveness. And so we all know that teacher quality and teacher effectiveness is the most important factor that affects learning in the classroom. And so it is something that we cannot undervalue. We have to value experience, we have to value training, we have to prioritize that training and support, not only to be able to retain teachers, but also to recruit new teachers.
I know you've got another audience question, but I have to ask you guys, because we're talking about, the before the test, after the test. Merit pay is also going to be a discussion this
No.
legislative session. I know it's very controversial. Just because we can't compare apples to apples, it sets up a whole lot of things. But is that one way to motivate and get more teachers into the classroom? Say, hey, you do a good job, you're going to make extra money.
No. And it's not fair to compare a first-year teacher to me as a 25-year teacher. And
Or a special ed teacher
or a
and a regular.
special ed teacher to a music teacher, or an art teacher to a media, or no.
Are you hearing your colleagues in the legislature wanting? I know some of them do.
Here, let me reframe this, okay? Because this is my job. If we are basing merit pay based on student outcomes, that has so many systemic issues baked into it. So let me then propose that we should be paying our teachers based on their preparation. Because if we want to address the issues of efficacy and we want to address the issues of preparedness and making sure that we have the best teachers with our students, then let's incentivize through pay the things that we know will best prepare them to be the best in the classroom.
Are there any states? Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Are there any states anywhere that are successful with that merit pay? Does anyone know?
We've done things before that have never worked before. I've seen our legislature do it, so I'm not sure that's going to keep us.
I'm just curious. Does Massachusetts do?
But imagine
merit
if we took Senator Hicks' idea there and we incentivized in that manner based off of preparation, but the incentive was to take those highly prepared, high-quality teachers and have them work in those environments that need those highly prepared, high-quality teachers, pay them a significant amount where then they have to make a decision about, I can go work in this classroom that's going to have its challenges, but I'm going to get paid $10,000 more, or I can opt to go to this other area, and now they're making a choice, and they're getting that option that they right now don't really get because it's all kind of just across the board.
Has that been proposed?
I am proposing that. Because, I mean, again, great teachers are not afraid of accountability. They, in fact, probably could rattle off their class rosters in the audience on, who they're targeting, what their next intervention is, how they're, really focusing in on those students. So, I mean, we live in data. It's a reflective practice. You're constantly trying to hone and sharpen the best lesson to make sure that it resonates well with your students and really moves the needle on their outcomes. And so, again, it's not about, accountability, because really great teachers are going to be completely honest with you. They'll be like, here's the grade book, here's what we're doing, here's what I've done for the last 3 months. What do you think? Right? So, again, I just think that the question in and of itself is flawed, because the merit-based system attached to a student outcome has too many flawed systems to really be reflective. And I mean, again, I've also said this, if we're going to move to that, then give me a growth model, because it's not fair to say, this student had XYZ teacher last year, and now they're in your classroom, and we know that they're 3 grade levels behind, and they don't pass, and that's on you. I mean, give me a growth model, give me a pre and post assessment, and I can show you what I've done during that school calendar year, because that really is reflective of the learning that's happened in that academic year with the teacher that's at the front of the classroom.
Another question to get to, so hopefully we can move things along a little bit.
Yes, so Jade writes in, I'm a freshman in high school. I was a first grader during the 2018 teacher walkouts. I've spent years in large classes, and I've been taught by non-certified teachers. I want to know what my future looks like and whether or not the students after me will have it better.
Well, you've got folks like, is it Jade?
Yes, this is Jade who writes in.
Jade could end up in a classroom teaching from her memory of being taught by an unqualified teacher. It's cyclical, right? Do we see this generationally? If you have a generation of students who weren't properly educated now leading classrooms, we've lost the model.
Well, and I mean, I would just say to Jade, I mean, the future is yours. I mean, we all end up in situational circumstances, and obviously the accountability in which led to those circumstances falls squarely on the shoulders of the legislature for inadequately funding our public schools, and I will bear that. The reality is, though, from here, you get to decide what you're going to do with your future, and knowing that you have overcome those obstacles and overcome those challenges will make you stronger in being able to tackle what's ahead of you. The other part of this, Oklahoma's commitment, is really understanding that we have significant challenges with literacy in families. And so the family support piece is incredibly important. I was actually just on this campus 2 weeks ago to witness high school equivalency graduation. So these are folks who were adult learners who dropped out of high school, came back, worked their tails off, and were celebrating their accomplishments that night. And every single one of them had an individualized story as to what led to the circumstances of that particular decision at that particular time. But what I can tell you is all of them were proud of themselves for finishing what they started. And not only that, their reasons were largely about making sure that their kids had better opportunities. And one of the things that families can do with ensuring literacy in the home is reading with your kids 20 minutes every single night.
We just got an email from our state superintendent not too long ago directing parents to start that earlier, as quickly as possible, start reading. Are you guys seeing that as well as that being a factor in kids starting school ready in kindergarten? Yeah.
Exposure to language. And that's what creates a good reader.
Let's go back to the young lady's question, Jade. Can we guarantee that teachers will be more competent in the next generation? Let's talk about, we have 35,000 certified teachers in Oklahoma who are not teaching. 35,000 out there who are doing something else. Kansas, Florida, Georgia, and I think Alabama have just announced within the last couple of weeks that they're going to pay their teachers $10,000 more a year over the next 5 years. If we don't do something there and try to attract those 35,000 that are already certified, they're not emergency certified, they're already fully certified. Let's get them, if they're out driving a truck somewhere, let's get them back into teaching. Let's recruit those people by raising the pay of certified teachers, and let's not forget our support staff as well.
Amen.
So those are things that we can do to make sure that Jade's question gets answered in the affirmative, I think.
I'm so glad you said that. When I found out, a friend of mine who was a support staff person for my child, after we were no longer there and we could be friends, when she told me how much she took home, my jaw dropped. That is not a livable wage. No. And knowing how hard she works, it broke my heart. How in the world are we attracting and retaining support staff?
Support, let me tell you, I could not do my job without the support staff. My job is as impossible as it is right now. If you're taking away my support staff, we're talking about everybody who pitches in. And, you know, when We need those people. They're at our door. We could not function without support staff, and it's so incredibly heartbreaking to me that a lot of these people have to go find other jobs because you cannot
Or
make
two other jobs,
or
I'm
two. You
hearing.
can't make a livable wage being a support staff. You can't.
I have two quick questions. The first one, I'd like a question for everybody. It's a true false, so if we can just sound off, please. True or false, too many Oklahomans believe that teachers and union members are terrorists, groomers, or indoctrinators.
True.
True.
False.
I know.
Yeah, you can abstain. It's okay to abstain. It's okay. It's okay to abstain. So, to the person, okay, never mind. I'll just say that the past 2 years there was a lot of misinformation. Maybe the superintendent of Deer Creek could agree that you were a target of some disinformation the past 2 years.
That doesn't sound right.
Right. So I think that one thing is that disinformation, too much of it got top leaders, they didn't correct it. So we're going to have to spend about the next 5 years reteaching Oklahoma about who teachers are.
Yes. I agree.
And then the other quick question, why can't, the Chamber of Commerce wants to get more active and involved. They have this model. Why don't they just adopt it? Each chamber member adopt a school, put their sign in the front, and pay for all the literacy PD.
Do you know how many Chamber of Commerce people contacted teachers about any plan?
No.
0.
Right, but I'm sure the chamber members don't like more taxes, but if they charitably give to fund the PD, then that's tax deductible. So
Let them. I would, if the chamber wants to give us money to go to professional development, let them.
Yeah.
I welcome that. But
Yeah.
they're not asking teachers. They didn't ask about any input from
right.
any teachers I've talked to, and I have a Facebook group of 65,000 people. So
But that's not even an ask of your opinion. It's just hey, I'll
just
give you
ask
this.
me. I am so unintimidating.
Yeah.
I am
just,
literally the least
Strong
unintimidating.
disagree.
Oh.
They could give a blank check for literacy PD.
But
Those are my two questions. Thank you.
I'm willing to meet and talk to whoever wants me to. I had a snarky, not Senator Hicks, but I did have a snarky comment from a legislator. And I said, let me give you my personal phone number, and we're going to connect sometime this weekend because I'm literally, just ask me. I can tell you what we need to do.
Wendy, we didn't get to the last question, and that was one that said, if we were to make this shift, what is one thing we would have to do right away? And Jamie's alluded to it several times. I've watched a TED Talk recently of a gentleman that said some things that really stuck in my head, and I haven't really forgotten them. And the first thing that he said was that education is not done behind government buildings. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is he went on to say that schools are not mechanical systems, but they're human systems. And so that means that what's happening in that system is between people. And when we remove the voice of those people that are within that system, the system fails.
Do you feel like that voice
it
has
gave me
been
chills.
removed?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we talk about that last question? Because I have a stance on that too. That I'm.
I would love to. I did not mean to skip question 5. I knew we had some audience members. So, guys, I of course, let's talk about that. That was if Oklahomans were to truly shift the way we approach education, what needs to change first? What is the first step?
Okay, so I've pitched this a couple times and I haven't got any traction. So either it's a really bad idea or people just aren't listening. So here we go. Put this down.
Oh.
So even tonight, we on the stage, we've talked about rankings and being ranked 50th has come up a few times. And this has come up since, I don't know, August, July. And who brought that up? It was Wallet Hub. Well, what is Wallet Hub? It's a personal finance app. I don't know why we've decided that a personal finance app is going to be the penultimate decision maker for our rankings in the state of Oklahoma. And when you really take a good look at, well, first of all, we love that because it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on. It's, I mean, you be ranked 50th. That's something that's newsworthy. It's something that causes a lot of buzz. But nobody's actually stopping for a second to see what are the metrics behind that ranking. Same thing with U.S. News and World Reports. They put out a ranking every year, ranking the top high schools, top elementaries, what have you. But when you dig into the metrics they use to make those determinations, I think the problem that we have in Oklahoma is we just accept whatever's being thrown at us as far as rankings go, because it's always low, and then we can either blame schools, blame legislators.
Use it as a reason to
exactly.
pitch your change.
Exactly. And I think that our problem in the state is that we don't know what it is that we value in education. Because if we would really get down to pinpointing that, and then determining collectively how are we going to measure that in a consistent basis, then maybe we might get some traction here. If we're saying that, hey, third grade literacy is super important to us in Oklahoma, fantastic. Let's measure it in a way that we can all agree upon, and then let's continue to measure it that same way year after year. Right now, we're basing things off of a state test score. Folks, the third grade state test does not tell you whether or not your child can read. That's not what that's intended to do. It's a measurement of the standards that were taught that year. And even then, it's hard to even decipher what in the heck that the result's telling you. It's giving you a number that doesn't make any sense to anybody. It's not useful to people, so people have to rely on Hub or U.S. News and World Reports or GoDaddy. Who knows what's going to come up next? Whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to say that we're terrible.
OnlyFans has got us ranked really well.
It's frustrating when we do have metrics in this state that we can use in order. We just have to decide what it is that's important to us. We keep saying that we're a workforce state. We really want to focus in on workforce. We don't measure the things that we're doing in our schools that are pushing that. I'm going to brag on my own daughter for a second. She's a senior this year at Southmore High School, and she chose not to come with Dad for some reason to Deer Creek. I know, that's her issue. She is graduating this year with over 60 college credits from concurrent. We do not use that as a metric in this state to determine how our students are performing. That right there is getting her closer to being in the workforce in Oklahoma. Same thing with the kids who go to career tech and they're earning licenses and certifications. They're coming out ready to earn more than us. That's phenomenal. We don't measure that. That is not part of our accountability system in this state to truly rank us. So maybe if we step back for a second, not worry about this national stuff, not worry about, or hey, if we're going to worry about the NAEP, great, then let's make that the focal point and let's do something about it. Instead, we just wait for rankings to come to us, and then we just say, woe is me all the time. And that's not going to move it. Until we know what it is we want to accomplish here in education in the state, we're not going to get any better.
And not listen to other people telling us what we are and not. Okay.
Ms. Carson, I served on the ICC, which is the Interagency Coordinating Council for Sooner Start, for 3.5 years. 3.5 years I served on that board. Craig, I saw our legislature defund early education initiatives. My son Max, he was born with severe disabilities, and he went through early Head Start and Head Start programs, and it was pulling tooth and nails to get him somewhere. Because we had a legislator serving on the board that had no business being on that board. And why is it that at the entire education caucus, are teachers not educated on children's civil rights anymore? You know who I am, don't you?
I do.
It has the state of Oklahoma in a big mess. And I saw it from 2019 to 2022, intentional dismantling of our public education. It was intentional. We cannot be willfully indifferent. Our state has been willfully indifferent to intentional dismantling of our public education system. And it affects our students, it affects our teachers, it affects our home.
I agree with you.
We have got to be loud and hold our lawmakers accountable. Senator Hicks, you are named in a charge for being willfully indifferent to intentional civil rights violations. When did you report that?
Okay.
We need
it
to talk
is
about that.
already
No, you're not
time
going to
for
cut me
us
off,
to
Sandra.
finish. It is already time for us to finish. We are way past the time.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
We appreciate you. We want to give a round of applause to this panel right here, and Wendy Suarez for hosting. Please give a round of applause to Sandra Valentine for the incredible data she presented on the Pulse survey and her coordination of this event tonight. Round of applause for Sandra.
I want to add one more thing. There are 7 of us that are on the stage right now that are educators, and it is over 200 years of experience that we have on the stage. Yes.
Not the math.
So
Not the math.
isn't that amazing? You guys, wasn't this an amazing conversation? I hope you guys had fun. And we do have 2 more that are in the works, one for Tulsa and one for Weatherford. So if you have friends in that area, I know I got friends in the audience in Tulsa area, please let them know that this was a wonderful experience. We'll have different panelists. They'll bring their voice and their experience to the education town hall. And this was an amazing, let's give it up for this panel.
Just one final.
Amazing.
Oh, so sorry.
Go ahead.
Just one final closing thought. Conversations like this don't happen in isolation. They happen when we all come together. So thank you for choosing to be here. Thanks for being part of the conversation. This is just the beginning. This is just the shift to move education forward. So please give a round of applause again for these panelists, for Wendy, for OCE, and for all of you being here. We're so grateful.